Today, on A Word on Westerns, Michael Beck.
Growing up in the South, I grew up outside of Memphis, Tennessee. Jim Bowie, who was a Louisianan originally, my television Western indoctrination. I'm a child, I was born in the late 40s, so the 50s and 60s.
Jim Bowie, he
there
was
you go.
a bold adventuring man.
To be cast in that role was, a thrill for me. I was playing one of my childhood heroes.
Welcome to A Word on Westerns, where we talk to the greatest Western creators of yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Rob Word. Welcome to A Word on Westerns.
And I'm RJ Word, producer of the show, Rob's son, and an excited listener because we have a warrior who's about to come out and play.
Ooh, that's right. And that would be Mr. Michael Beck, who played Swan in The Warriors, directed by one of our favorites here.
Walter Hill.
Exactly. But Michael did more than just play Swan in The Warriors. He was the son of Richard Harrison, one of the sequels to A Man Called Horse. So he's got his Western creds. And as most of you all know out there, The Warriors, according to Walter, because he says every film I've ever made is a Western, The Warriors is like a Western. And I love that film. And we're going to find out how Michael got that part.
It's a fun story. The Warriors is also one of my favorite movies. It's aged incredibly well, and it's just so damn cool.
It really is that. And so is Michael. He is driving up for this interview from San Diego, and he had also played Jim Bowie to Sam Elliott's Sam Houston in a miniseries, Gone to Texas.
What year was that?
Oh, are these trick questions, RJ?
Yeah.
My
dad is an encyclopedia of Western knowledge, so I take every little opportunity I can get to stump him.
Well, you stumped me on this one, young cowboy. I'm just kidding. It came out in 1986.
And who else was in it?
Bo Hopkins was in that, too, and Donald Moffat. It was very, very good, and we'll let Michael tell us all about it. But what a terrific guy, and in the audience for this, because we do have a live audience for this interview, so you'll hear some laughs. We have his friend Michael McGreevy, who had been a guest with us before, had been a child actor and became a writer, producer, and directed Michael Beck in a film.
We should do an episode on that called A Word on Michael.
We can do better than that in terms of coming up with good titles, okay?
I think so, too.
So right now our title is Michael Beck, a warrior.
On A Word on Westerns. Let's give it a listen.
That was an early part for you, The Warriors.
Early, like in the morning?
Or early? Wow, already he's going to be funnier than me. No. That's okay, I like that.
Yeah, actually, I had done one independent film in Israel prior to The Warriors. In fact, that's the reason I got that movie.
Did Walter screen that?
Yeah, what happened was I got into acting when I was at college, at Millsaps College in Jackson, Mississippi. And from there, I went to London and went to drama school at the Central School of Speech and Drama and worked in repertory theater in the UK for a couple of years. So I was 5 years in the UK and came back to New York.
Doing theater plays.
Yeah, theater, exactly. It was a theater training. So I came back to New York because that's where you do theater here in America. And the casting directors on The Warriors, they knew me as this British-trained classical actor, and they would not submit me. Everybody my age or younger in New York wanted that part, wanted to be in that movie. And so they just said, he's not right. He could never play a New York street kid. Fortunately, Walter was one of the producers and written a draft for Alien, and Sigourney Weaver, it was her first movie. the movie that I did in Israel called Madman was it, and I played the titular role in that. Walter screened it to see Sigourney and saw me in that role, and then he requested to these two casting agents who wouldn't submit me, I want to see this guy, Michael Beck.
How great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the role in Madman?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was great. I mean, the film was kind of spotty and hit and miss. It was the first film for this director to direct. He was there for the death of this character, the titular character in the movie, who was a Russian Jew. He and his brother had wanted to immigrate to Israel. They were put into an insane asylum, which was what Russia did at that point. Not that they were insane, but that was one of the things that they did to, kind of torture people. And his brother died in that incarceration. And finally, he was allowed to go immigrate to Israel. And he actually was pretty insane by the end.
What a great showcase, though.
Yeah, his whole motivation was to get across the Golan Heights and kill as many Russians as he could. Yeah, so it was a revenge.
We need him now.
We do. Exactly. Exactly.
So with Walter, then, you got this great part of Swan, and that movie was a huge hit. People were rioting in the theaters.
And that stopped it from being a huge hit initially. Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting thing. When it opened, that opening weekend, it was the highest grossing film for that weekend. And within about 2 or 3 weeks, there had been some incidents where, gangs had gone to the movie and there had been some altercations and a couple of kids were killed, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. And Paramount pulled all of the advertising from the movie, print advertising, all advertising. So the movie which had a great opening, within a month was kind of gone.
But it came back.
It did come back. I remember exactly when I heard, what? I had a friend who went to Paris, I think it was probably around 82 or 83. And he came back from this trip that he had gone. He said, Beck, you're not going to believe this. I was walking down the street in Paris and I looked over and I saw all these characters dressed, all these people dressed as characters from the Warriors for this midnight screening, and I said, really? But that was the first time I had any clue that there might be an afterlife for the Warriors. Then, videos and things like that, HBO, and it's
more than a cult movie, I think. I went to a screening about 10 years ago. Like half the audience had their Warriors jackets on. It was so cool.
And they scream every line.
Oh, man, it's so good. Now, you were in cut shape for that film. I mean, it's amazing. And the action in it, the set pieces with the baseball Furies and the score, Barry DeVorzon, I think. What a wonderful film that is. It's a Western.
It is a Western. I read a quote one time that is attributed to Walter Hill, where he said, every film that I've ever made is a Western.
Good for him. We love it. Let's hear it for Walter. Yeah.
And, certainly the Warriors, even though it's set in an urban setting with street gangs, you see so many archetypal Western characters in that movie. And it is that same kind of morality play that, Westerns to me are America's morality play. They always have been. It's, there are always morals in it. They're always in a society where good people have to take things in their hands to set things right, because the culture is not going to do it. So it's always, the one guy.
Now, your character, Swan, who would you compare that character to of Western stars?
I was thinking about that. I was thinking you might ask that question.
Wow.
And I was remembering.
I just thought of it myself.
When I did that movie, I always thought of Swan because he's stoic, he's laconic, though he doesn't let it out much, a sensitivity and a caring and looking after, like Rembrandt, the artist. Swan's always got an eye because he knows Rembrandt's not a fighter. So he's got him covered. So to me, he is kind of a combination of a Gary Cooper role and a Clint Eastwood role,
Of the Eastwood films, who would be the closest of the characters that Clint has played? I know probably High Noon for Cooper.
Yeah. I would say the outlaw Josie Wales, because he takes in all these people and he's protective of them, as opposed to, the Leone movies where he's
a kind of a bad guy.
Exactly.
But you're right. And Outlaw Josie Wales, I think that's Clint's best film.
It's one of my favorite Westerns of all time.
But I can see the similarities there, too. How were the stunt guys with you?
They were great. Craig Baxley was the coordinator on that. And because we were all young, unknown actors.
Ready to get beat up.
Well, there was no insurance worry about us. I can put it that way. So we all got to do our own stunts. But Craig came in probably, I'd say about 3 weeks before principal photography began. And we had class every day, 5 days a week, to learn how to throw punches for the camera, to take punches, to stunt fight. And, so we just had a kind of crash course in being stuntmen. So, and we did all of our own stuff, Walter, he's said before that when he cast that movie, he kept an eye out. Not only could these people he was casting play the role, but would they be physically up to the task that he alone knew was coming? 80 nights, running, fighting, all that, for 4 months.
How were you physically in shape prior to being cast in that? Were you?
Well, I'd always been into, I was an athlete in college, high school and college. I ran 6 miles a day, 5 days a week anyway, and went to the gym. So I was in good shape when we started, and I continued, we would film all night. You'd get home, after the sun came up. So I would sleep, get up around 1:30 in the afternoon, go have something to eat, and go to the gym, and then be at the Gulf and Western.
Because the whole thing was set at night, so that was your schedule. Yeah. How long was the shoot?
It was, we started in June and finished at the end of October. Yeah. Because, nights in the summer are shorter, so we did not have,
So you could build up for those longer nights in the fall, right?
Exactly.
Oh, man.
That last scene on the beach was chilly. Yeah.
Well, there are so many great scenes in that. The score right with the movement, like after you guys wipe out the baseball Furies and you just kind of swing that bat around.
Yeah.
And the music cue is right there on it. That's great stuff.
Yeah.
The audience goes, yeah.
Yeah. Barry Dvorak did a great job on that movie, by choosing music that was already there and some original things. And then, Joe Walsh's song at the end, is just such a great classic song.
And Walter said that the DJ, the woman with her face, he said when they first started it, it was like a wide shot on her face, and they kept going, closer. Let's do it again, closer. And then finally it's just like this, and it works.
Yeah.
It's so good. And so we never saw her face, and he put her in another film, maybe The Driver or something, I don't remember.
Well, Driver came before Warriors, but she became, she was a very good actress, and so she had a couple of television shows and things,
Well, being in such great shape, maybe that's why they said, let's put him in Triumphs of a Man Called Horse, because he's going to be naked the whole time. Well, or close to. Yes.
Close to.
How did that come about? And Richard Harris, those films were phenomenal successes, surprise successes.
Yeah. I was offered that movie for whatever reasons that they chose me, and I liked the script.
And you played his son.
I played his son. I played Richard Harris's son, who had been sent back east to be educated. And, when his father was assassinated, he came home. I had come home and arrived prior to his being killed. So I did have his death scene together. But the greatest thing that we had with Richard Harris, what a great guy Richard Harris was. Kind of the reputation as a boozer and a brawler. And when we did that movie, I think Richard he'd given up drinking at that point.
He had to, because he wasn't wearing anything either.
Yeah, exactly. But what he did it probably 4 or 5 times during the 3 weeks we were in Cuernavaca. There was a really great restaurant in the kind of resort hotel where we were staying. And Richard, because Sandy Howard had welched on some money that he was supposed to pay Richard, he invited all of us, cast and crew, to dinner and just put it on the bill so that Sandy would have to pay it, which I thought was brilliant to begin with. But what was even better was he would sit at the end of the table, and he was a great raconteur, and he would tell stories all night long.
What were some of the stories?
My favorites, he was talking about when he was a young man, and he was in Ireland, and he and his mates had been out boozing, and it was probably 1 or 2 in the morning. He was driving home, and he stopped at a stoplight, and time kind of passed, and finally he heard a tapping on the window, and he rolled down the window, and a man looked in and said, "Was it a particular shade of green you were waiting for?" My favorite Richard Harris story.
That's great. That's great. Well, that film, that was rugged, and what was the weather like when you were shooting that?
Well, we filmed in the summer in Mexico. We filmed in Cuernavaca, and then we filmed in Durango, Scorpion capital of the world.
Oh,
yeah. It was warm. It was summertime in Mexico. Yeah.
And you also did a film before that I remember watching on TV, Ernest Tidingman's Alcatraz, the true story. I thought that was a wonderful film, and I knew you from the Warriors already, and I went, this is fantastic. And did you all shoot actually at Alcatraz?
Yes, we did. Yeah, this was a mini-series in
Art Carney, I think, was in it, and
yeah,
Telly
there was
Savalas.
Telly Savalas and Art Carney and Ronnie Cox. There was it was a good cast of people. I played a character named Clarence Carnes, the real Clarence Carnes was on the set. He was a Choctaw Indian from Oklahoma. When he was young, he was like 17 years old. He and a friend of his robbed a filling station, and his friend shot someone. So they were both convicted of murder, and he eventually was sent to Alcatraz because he had been in a local prison and had tried to escape. Mm-hmm. He was the youngest person ever incarcerated in Alcatraz, so it was his kind of story there. It was a real good acting part to play. I loved playing that part. And him being there was, he was a living, even though he was much older, he was still a living study, because that character went from 17 years old to in his late 40s.
So he was on set most of the time.
He was on set every day.
And what did he think of your portrayal?
I never asked him. You don't do that. What did you think of my portrayal?
I hope he liked it.
I think he did. Yeah. I think he was happy with it. Yeah.
No, you were great in that. That was a wonderful, wonderful miniseries.
Yeah. And here's a great thing that happened as a side thing. My wife made out a list when she was younger of 30 characteristics that she wanted in a husband. Emotional, physical, spiritual things that she wanted in a husband. And she loves to tell this story, that when we met and fell in love and got married, that I met 29 of those things. But one thing that she wanted was that person have dark brunette or black hair.
Did she divorce you?
Huh?
I mean,
No. Here's what happened. I did that movie, the Alcatraz movie, and my hair was dyed black to do that movie. And 3 weeks after we wrapped that movie, I got married. So she married someone with jet black hair.
Good for her. A real character, that must be difficult to play. I know you also played one of the legendary American heroes, Jim Bowie, and actually, I have the knife that you had, and Sam Elliott played Sam Houston, and you were Jim Bowie.
Yeah, I did play Jim Bowie. And the thing about this knife, which is cool, is one of the guys who was in the movie had a non-speaking role. He was, just one of the many soldiers there, but he was also a knife maker. He made this knife and just, gave it to the prop master to use as the Bowie knife. He wasn't commissioned to do it. He just made it. At the end of the movie, the man who made it said that I could have it and take it home, as a memento of the movie.
What a nice thing.
And I did a film with a director who's a friend, has become a friend. And he was talking about how much he loved, Jim Bowie and the whole kind of Texas independence movie and things like that. But he really loved Jim Bowie. So at the end of this thing that he and I shot, I gave him this Bowie knife. Mike McGreevy is his name. There he is.
Okay. Well, what a treasure. What a treasure that is.
And so let me ask you, how did this knife come from Mr. McGreevy into your care?
I'm a nice guy, too. He gave it to me for my birthday, and if you want it back, it's yours.
I'm not an Indian giver. This is yours.
He only plays them.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because Sam Elliott just is an icon in the Western genre. What was he like on set?
Sam is a great guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the kind of person you would want him and think that he is. You know, he's just kind of low-key. Well, I've heard people talking about low-key actors. He's low-key and got the best voice in the business. And, you know, really good actor. I enjoyed working with him.
And Catherine made a cameo in.
She did, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was that a difficult shoot? I mean, the story of the Alamo and this, you all didn't sugarcoat these characters at all in this movie. Frank Dobbs, I believe, wrote it.
Right, he did, yeah. And Peter Levin directed this movie. The most difficult part, I think, of filming that movie is that we filmed in Del Rio, Texas, and it was probably 105 every day that we shot. So it was hot. It was definitely.
You don't want to do summer shoots in Texas.
It was definitely warm, for sure.
So tell us a little bit about that, then the characters. And it was darker. These characters were not the hero, the whitewashed heroes that we see.
Yeah. Growing up in the South, I grew up outside of Memphis, Tennessee. Jim Bowie, who was Louisianan originally, my television Western indoctrination. I'm a child, you know, I was born in the late 40s, so the 50s and 60s.
Jim Bowie, he was a bold adventuring man.
Yeah, I loved Jim Bowie. Yeah. So, you know, to be cast in that role was a thrill for me. I was playing one of my childhood heroes, not just in television, but I'm an avid reader, and I majored in college in history until my father said, how the hell are you going to make a living out of a history major? So I changed to economics and became an actor. So you figure it out. That works. So anyway, I still read historical things now. So I had already done a lot of research prior to getting the role of Jim Bowie, just reading about that whole, independence movement. So, I just reread some things, because I really wanted to figure out who was this person.
Was he a good hero, or was he?
He was like most human beings, flawed, He had good things about him. He had things about him that were not so good. He was a slave trader at one point.
And Sam Houston, too.
Exactly. But, you have to put that in the context of the times, as opposed to, not that it in any way justifies slavery, but that was what was happening at that time in American history.
You've been a wonderful guest, Mike, and I'm so glad you came up, and especially because now I can keep this treasure.
You were going to keep it anyway. Oh, no!
It's yours if you want it. Seriously.
No, that's yours.
Well, I'm going to hang it back up on the wall where it had been before I took it down to make an offering to you. But I sure enjoyed you coming, and I've enjoyed your work. And I may just go home and watch The Warriors again, because it just kicks ass. Come out and play. Thank you for coming to play today, Robert. Okay.
Well, I could listen to Richard Harris stories all day.
Me too. In fact, Michael was pretty darn lucky to have worked with him and to have heard in person those stories.
For my generation, that's the original Dumbledore.
Well, for mine, he was MacArthur's Park, which was a really stupid song that lasted about 15 minutes on one side of an LP back in the old days, and it was a big, big seller.
That's too long for a song.
This was like a speaking song, and it was an amazing hit for Richard Harris.
Like classic songs resung by the wonderful melodic tones
of William Shatner.
William Shatner, exactly. Rocket Man, I think it's going to be a long, long time.
He's special. He's special. I would love to get William Shatner on here. Bill, if you're listening, come on, pal. You made a lot of Westerns. We want you here.
Yes, sir.
So for all of you out there, get your cowboy cred going and come back and join us again for the next A Word on Westerns.
Happy trails.
If you enjoy what we do here, please take a moment to follow our show and share these interviews with your friends. You can also find A Word on Westerns on Patreon, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you, and see you next week on A Word on Westerns. A Word on Westerns is produced and hosted by Rob and RJ Word. Edited by Alex Lockett and Bohr and Ebor Dro. Location audio is provided by Richard Reagan. Sound design by Alex Lockett. A Word on Westerns theme song was composed by Karel Pasoda with additional arrangements by Shipwreck Music and RJ Word.